At 5:14 local time, the Combat Information Center aboard a United States Navy destroyer shifts from routine watchstanding to razor-focused alertness in under 3 seconds. 3 surface contacts, fast, closing, bearing 087. On the radar scope, they emerge first as clean, hard returns slicing across the northern edge of the transit corridor in the Strait of Hormuz. No AIS signal, no bridge-to-bridge call, no hesitation. Just 3 hulls accelerating out of the grey-blue pre-dawn, their wakes already fanning wide behind them. Inside CIC, no one raises their voice. There is no need to debate what the numbers mean. Contact 1, 34 knots. Contact 2, 31. Contact 3, now pushing 36. That last figure draws attention. Fast attack craft at those speeds can run a full playbook. They can harass, feint, cross the bow, force course corrections, and in water as confined as Hormuz, even a near miss carries the weight of an international incident. The destroyer knows precisely where it sits, precisely which lane it is holding, and precisely how little margin exists for mistakes. Up on the bridge, the officer of the deck steps toward the forward windows as the horizon begins sharpening with first light. The ship is one element of a larger American naval movement through the strait, screening the formation ahead and keeping the passage clean. Until this moment, the sea has cooperated. Merchant traffic steady, systems nominal, readiness condition controlled. Then the contacts change vector, not parallel shadowing, not distant observation, converging. One from the port side, one from starboard, one from dead ahead and slightly offset. That geometry is not accidental. Closest point of approach is under 4 nautical miles and still shrinking. The commanding officer steps onto the bridge without ceremony. He takes one look at the repeater display and asks the only question worth asking. Any comms? Negative, Captain. No answer to the initial hail. He nods once. Hail them again. The radio operator transmits across bridge-to-bridge frequencies, voice flat and deliberate. Unknown fast craft, unknown fast craft. This is a United States Navy warship conducting lawful transit. You are closing at unsafe speed. Alter course immediately. Nothing comes back. No static, no acknowledgement, no correction. Only the wakes growing longer. Down in CIC, the consoles throw steady light across focused faces. Surface warfare operators mark every bearing shift. Electronic warfare begins pulling in emissions. Infrared cameras pivot toward the threat sector and lock on. The contacts are still too distant for a clean visual identification, but the heat signatures from their engines burn bright and stable. These boats are not wandering into the shipping lane by accident. They are driving hard, and they know exactly what they are doing. First visual confirmation comes from the starboard lookout. Multiple small craft, low silhouette, fast attack profile, approximately 10 miles out. The commanding officer studies the geometry. 3 boats, 3 axes, a narrowing lane ahead, civilian shipping to the south. The Iranian coastline dissolved somewhere beyond the morning haze to the north. He has seen this particular shape before, not an attack, not yet. First comes the pressure. Force the American ship to turn, force the transit to slow. Create friction, create footage, create a headline. The destroyer does not hand them one, maintain course and speed. That order carries real weight in these waters. Any unnecessary movement can be read as panic or as weakness. The ship holds steady at 15.5 knots. The lead contact surges again, 38 knots now, fast enough that its bow is climbing and slamming against the chop. Another cuts slightly inward from the starboard side, tracing a line that could compress the destroyer's maneuvering room in under 5 minutes. Closest point of approach now 2.8 nautical miles. On the bridge wing, long-range optics finally drag detail from the morning light. Narrow hulls, armed profiles, military paint schemes. No ambiguity remaining. Iranian fast attack craft. The report moves through the ship in clipped professional language. Bridge, CIC, contacts assessed as Iranian, 3 fast attack craft, coordinated approach. The commanding officer does not react visibly. Log it. Below decks, the ship begins its quiet transition from presence to posture. Not combat, not yet, but posture. The forward gun mount slews a few degrees off the centerline, not enough to constitute a threat, enough to be seen by anyone watching. close-in weapons crews report ready. Decoy systems receive a final check. The electronic warfare suite deepens its collection, capturing every sweep, every whisper, every flicker radiating off the Iranian hulls. This is no longer just seamanship. This is evidence in the making. Outside, the water keeps shrinking. At 5:17, the portside contact makes the first genuinely aggressive move. It angles across the destroyer's projected track. Not close enough to trigger collision alarms, but close enough to force every officer on the bridge to run the math on timing, speed, and available space. The starboard contact mirrors the pressure, holding wide, keeping the American ship bracketed between them. The third boat stays ahead, pacing, waiting. They are building a box. The radio operator hails again, sharper this time. Iranian military craft approaching United States warship. You are operating unsafely. Alter course immediately. Your actions are being recorded. Still nothing. No response, no adjustment, no pretense that this is a misunderstanding, only intent. From the flight deck, word reaches the bridge. Helicopter detachment standing by. That is the next rung on the ladder. Eyes overhead, pressure from altitude, legal documentation from every angle simultaneously. Spin them up, the commanding officer says. Seconds later, the first deep thump of rotor blades rolls across the stern as the ship's helicopter begins coming alive. Deck crews move fast, low and disciplined, every motion the product of repetition under pressure. Behind them, the destroyer keeps cutting forward through the strait. Grey hull, steady wake, no deviation. In CIC, one of the operators leans toward his display. New contacts. The room tightens. Bearing 012. 2 additional surface returns. Range 18 nautical miles. Speed high. Heading south. For 1 full second, no one speaks. Then the tactical picture refreshes all at once, and what it shows is unambiguous. This was never just 3 boats. That was the opening move. And now, with the helicopter spinning up on the flight deck and 5 Iranian craft beginning to shape the water ahead, the destroyer is no longer looking at harassment. It is looking at a trap. At 5:19 local time, the tactical picture firms up completely. 5 Iranian surface contacts now bracket the northern edge of the shipping lane. 3 are already close enough to influence the destroyer's decisions. 2 more are driving south at speed, still beyond visual range, but no longer theoretical. On the display in CIC, the geometry is unambiguous. This is not random shadowing. This is coordinated compression, deliberate and professional. On the flight deck, the helicopter lifts clear. Rotor wash tears across the steel as the MH-60 Romeo Seahawk rises off the stern, nose dipping briefly before leveling, then pushing north toward the contacts. Its mission is straightforward on paper and dangerous in execution. Identify, expand the ship's situational awareness, and make unmistakably clear that the destroyer is not operating blind. Below, the American ship holds course. That alone demands discipline. The Strait of Hormuz does not forgive sloppy ship handling. Tankers are already pushing through the southern lanes. Commercial traffic creates fixed, predictable patterns. The Iranian crews understand this. They are using geography the way a close-quarters fighter uses walls. Not to attack yet, but to reduce options. Closest point of approach update. Lead contact now 2.1 nautical miles. Starboard flanker holding at 2.5. Forward contact easing back slightly, possibly waiting on the others to complete their setup. The commanding officer listens without speaking. He has accumulated enough close water experience to separate noise from choreography. What he is watching is choreography. The first imagery from the helicopter arrives seconds later. Grainy at the edges, then sharpening. Narrow hulls, low-profile fast attack craft, military silhouettes, wake signatures overlapping in a rough arc. One boat is leading visibly, driving hard, pulling attention. Another stays offset to starboard, never fully committing. The third continues ahead, acting as a gate. The 2 newer contacts are farther back, but positioned correctly to turn this from 3-point pressure into a complete encirclement. They are hunting, the helicopter sensor operator reports over the net. That word lands with weight. From altitude, the pattern is cleaner than anything visible from sea level. The Iranian craft are not charging in as a reckless mob. They are using disciplined spacing, One pressures from the bow, one threatens a hard cut from starboard. One holds port side, far enough out to demand caution. The trailing pair are closing as a second layer, positioned to exploit any American turn. The destroyer answers the only way it can. Continue warnings, log all emissions, maintain speed. The bridge-to-bridge radio goes out again. Iranian military craft. This is United States Navy warship in lawful transit. Your maneuvers are unsafe. Alter course immediately. Silence. No acknowledgement, no course correction, no effort to maintain the fiction that this is a misunderstanding. At 5:21, the lead Iranian boat commits to the first genuine pressure maneuver. It surges across the destroyer's projected track, not close enough to trigger collision alarms, but close enough to force every officer on the bridge to recheck timing, closing speed, and remaining sea room. The starboard flanker accelerates in coordination. Now the destroyer is framed from both sides simultaneously. The Seahawk descends from 60 meters above the water, coming in fast but controlled, angling just wide of the lead boat. The crew can make out figures on deck now. Helmets, dark utilities, movement around crew-served weapons. No weapon is visibly trained. That is not the point. Presence itself is the message. The helicopter broadcasts on open frequencies. Iranian military vessel. This is United States Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely in proximity to a United States warship. Alter course immediately. The warning repeats. Still nothing. But one thing does change. The lead Iranian boat nudges its bow half a degree outward, just barely enough to look slightly less reckless on camera, then eases back onto its original line. Not a retreat. A performance. Inside CIC, the electronic warfare supervisor calls it out. Surface search radar sweep from contact 2. Low power, intermittent. They are painting us. Tracking behavior confirmed, not fire control. That distinction matters. Search radar means measurement. Position, heading, speed, intention. It is not a weapons solution, but it is one more step away from any claim of innocence. At 5:22, the fourth and fifth contacts begin their southward turn from the north. The tactical display grows tighter still. From above, the Seahawk now captures the complete picture. 5 craft staggered across a wide arc, never bunching, always preserving mutual maneuvering room. This is professional enough to be genuinely dangerous. The destroyer's response remains cold and deliberate. The forward gun holds its position off the center line, visible but restrained. Close-in systems stay ready and silent. Countermeasures are prepped and live. A second American warship farther back in the transit begins quietly adjusting its station, adding depth to the American side of the board. The Iranian boats may be building a box around one ship. They are not building it around one ship alone. Then the helicopter crew sees something worse than the boats. North of the swarm, closer to the Iranian shoreline, dust trails move across a pale strip of coast beyond the water. Long vehicles, spaced at intervals, stopping and starting. The sensor operator zooms in. Rectangular shapes, elevated frames. Bridge, helicopter, possible mobile launchers moving into position on the shoreline. Repeat. Possible mobile missile systems repositioning along the coast. For the first time that morning, the threat changes category entirely. This is no longer a surface harassment event, with fast boats playing geometry games in a crowded strait. Fast boats pressing from in front, shore-based systems activating in the background, a narrowing corridor in between. The destroyer keeps moving, but every person in CIC now understands the same thing at the same moment. The box around the ship is not the whole threat. It is cover for something considerably larger. At 5:24 local time, the Strait of Hormuz stops resembling a harassment zone and starts resembling a targeting problem. Inside CIC, the destroyer's threat board updates in real time. 5 Iranian fast attack craft remain spread across the northern side of the lane, still compressing the ship's maneuvering room. But now the helicopter feed has placed something heavier into the equation. Multiple mobile launcher vehicles moving along the Iranian coast, halting at staggered positions, orienting toward the water. That changes everything. Surface pressure can be managed. Shore-based missiles convert pressure into countdown. The report is transmitted twice to remove any margin for doubt. Possible launch vehicles confirmed. The commanding officer looks once at the tactical display, then at the bridge windows where the water ahead still appears calm enough to seem harmless. Pass it to the group. The message goes up the chain immediately. The destroyer is no longer simply screening a transit. It is the leading edge of a developing multi-domain threat event. Somewhere behind and to the south, the rest of the American formation begins responding, quietly, professionally, with no dramatic transmissions over open circuits. A second United States destroyer adjusts its station. Airborne surveillance assets tighten their focus. Additional sensors lean toward the shoreline. The visible shape of the trap remains on the water. The invisible shape of it is now spreading inland. At 5:25, the lead Iranian boat makes the boldest move yet. It cuts hard across the destroyer's projected path at a closing angle, near enough to force a recalculation on the bridge. Not collision close, not reckless enough to trigger immediate defensive action, but close enough to keep testing the nerve of the American ship's crew with every passing second. Closest point of approach, 1.4 nautical miles. No one on the bridge flinches. The destroyer does not surrender the lane. Maintain course, maintain speed. That order carries compounded weight now. Every second the ship holds steady, it denies the Iranian boats the image they came to create. An American warship driven off its track in one of the most scrutinized choke points on the planet. The Seahawk widens its orbit further. The crew can see the full board more clearly now. One Iranian craft has pushed too far forward and is exposing its flank to the destroyer's sensor suite. Another struggles to hold its position on the starboard side. The two trailing contacts are still closing, but their timing has begun slipping. Not dramatically, just enough to suggest the formation is operating under strain. It was not designed to absorb. Below, the destroyer's electronic warfare team is missing nothing. Every radar sweep, every burst of tactical communications, every small drift in spacing is being captured, tagged, and time-stamped. Then the first alert tone hits, sharp, brief, and unmistakable. Heads turn in CIC, radar activity from the shore. A second tone follows, longer this time. Not a missile launch warning. Not yet. But no longer background noise either. The emissions are stronger now, more focused and directional. Something on land is beginning to illuminate sectors of the water with considerably more than casual surveillance. Assessing targeting support behavior, the electronic warfare officer says, that is the most careful possible way to say what everyone in the compartment already understands. The commanding officer hears the tone through the bridge speaker and asks the question without dressing it up. Are they locking us? Negative confirmed lock, but the behavior is consistent and it is intensifying. Intensifying, that is the word that draws the air tighter. The helicopter is ordered to widen its orbit further still. If shore-based systems are actively waking up, a low-altitude aircraft circling in a predictable pattern becomes a far more tempting first move than a destroyer built to absorb punishment and return it. The Seahawk banks out wide and climbs, remaining on the board but refusing to become the easiest piece to take. At 5:26, the Iranian boats sense the pressure shifting and push harder in response. The forward craft angles in again, this time along a sharper line, its bow rising and falling hard against the chop, white water fanning across the darkening sea. The starboard flanker accelerates to match it, working to pin the American ship between motion and optics. The message is simple: react incorrectly and the image belongs to Tehran. The destroyer does not react incorrectly. The forward gun remains trained slightly off the center line, non-threatening but impossible to ignore. Close-in defense systems hold ready. Decoy launchers stay armed. Bridge optics remain locked on the nearest contacts. CIC is now running two simultaneous threat tracks, surface geometry and shore-based activation, without allowing either one to crowd out the other. Then one more American layer slides onto the board. A United States tactical aircraft, redirected from farther back in the formation, checks in overhead. Not low enough to provoke, not close enough to dominate the visual space, simply present. Fast, armed, and watching everything. The Iranian boats cannot ignore it. The lead craft wavers half a degree off its line before correcting. A tiny movement carrying enormous meaning. For the first time since 5:14, the pressure is no longer moving in only one direction. At 5:27, the shoreline emissions spike again. Brief, then gone. A pulse, not a launch. But enough for every trained set of ears in CIC to register that the boundary between intimidation and engagement is growing dangerously thin. The destroyer now sits at the center of precisely the kind of moment modern naval warfare handles worst. Too much apparent intent, too little definitive clarity, too many weapons systems inside effective range, and too little time to untangle the difference between provocation and commitment. Fast boats ahead, possible missile launchers active ashore, civilian shipping to the south, American forces converging from behind. And one misread action from any direction could convert a maneuvering contest into something that cannot be walked back. The lead Iranian boat turns inward one more time, sharper than before. Its bow is pointing across the destroyer's forward quarter along a line that no longer reads as theater. It reads as commitment. The commanding officer watches it for one beat too long for anyone else's comfort. Then he speaks, not loudly, not with any dramatism, just clearly enough that the bridge and CIC receive the same order at the same moment. Execute disruption. No elaboration follows, none is required. Because somewhere between 5 boats, a live shoreline, and tightening water, the United States Navy has just decided that the next move will not belong to Iran. At 5:27 local time, the balance tips. Not with gunfire, not with a missile in the air, with control. The order moves through the destroyer in clipped practiced language. Execute disruption. No emotion, no wasted movement. Inside CIC, that command means exactly one thing. Stop reacting to the shape of the trap and start taking it apart. The first blow is invisible. The electronic warfare team releases a precisely managed response across the electromagnetic spectrum. Not broad enough to look like panic. Not undisciplined enough to bleed over into civilian traffic in the lane. Just surgically precise enough to strike at the nervous system of the Iranian formation. The radios, the ranging, the timing, the confidence that coordinated harassment requires to function. On the helicopter feed, the effect is immediate. The lead Iranian boat, the one that had been driving pressure from the bow position for the past several minutes, stutters half a degree off its line, its wake loses its clean symmetry. Moments later, the starboard flanker drifts wider than any tactical reason could explain. Not far, just enough for trained eyes to recognize that the formation has lost its coherence. The 5 boats are no longer breathing as a single coordinated organism. Inside CIC, the electronic picture blooms and scatters. They are stepping on each other now. That is the first crack. The destroyer uses it without hesitation. Come right 2 degrees. It is a small helm order, barely perceptible from the outside, but timed precisely against the widening gap between the lead boat and the starboard flanker. It shifts the geometry of the entire engagement. The Iranian craft had spent nearly 20 minutes building a box. The front edge of that box is now misaligned, and the American ship is sliding its bow toward the seam. From altitude, the Seahawk crew sees it before anyone else. The 5-boat pattern is no longer clean. The trailing pair driving down from the north are still closing, but they are converging toward a tactical picture that has already changed beneath them. Their timing is late. Their spacing has slipped. The lead craft is no longer centered on the American ship's track. The starboard boat has drifted too wide. The portside pressure boat faces a choice between committing aggressively or being left isolated on its own side of the line. That hesitation costs them everything. The destroyer adds power. Not a dramatic surge, not a cinematic burst of speed, just enough additional thrust to force every Iranian cockpit to recalculate closing rates in real time. The American ship is no longer the fixed object at the center of the board. It is actively reshaping the board while the Iranian crews are still trying to read the version that no longer exists. The helicopter descends 1 pass lower, offset wide, holding every Iranian hull under continuous full-motion video. Its transmission comes again over open frequencies, harder than before. Iranian military vessels, you are interfering with the lawful transit of a United States warship. Your actions are unsafe and are being recorded. Break off immediately. This time something comes back. Not a formal naval response, not a clean tactical transmission. just fragmented, overlapping voices and clipped commands stepping across each other on the net. The kind of broken communications traffic that disciplined formations do not generate unless the plan is beginning to come apart at the seams. At 5:28, the lead Iranian craft tries to recapture the initiative with one more committed surge. It drives inward, bow hammering, attempting to cross the destroyer's forward quarter before the gap can widen further. But the destroyer has already passed through its decision point. The slight course adjustment, the added speed, and the layered electronic pressure have forced the Iranian lead boat into a deteriorating angle. Too aggressive to maintain formation integrity. Too committed to break away cleanly. Too exposed to continue dictating the rhythm of the encounter. Lead contact isolated. That report leaves CIC with the same tone someone might use to announce a weather observation. The American tactical aircraft overhead checks in closer. Still not diving, still not posturing aggressively, but near enough and low enough to fill the visual horizon of every Iranian crewman on those decks. What had looked from the Iranian side like a single destroyer caught in a well-designed box now looks like something else entirely. A warship holding its line, a helicopter overhead, fixed-wing support arriving, a second American surface combatant moving up from the rear, and every action being documented simultaneously from 3 separate domains. Then the shoreline goes quiet. For the first time since the launcher movement was first reported, the radar support behavior drops away. No hard targeting lock, no follow-up illumination. The destroyer's electronic warfare response has either complicated the targeting solution ashore or persuaded someone on land that the window is closing faster than it can be exploited. Either way, the launchers are no longer setting the pace. The destroyer is. At 5:29, the starboard Iranian flanker makes the error that effectively ends the pressure operation. Attempting to hold the box together, it turns inward too late and too sharply, crossing inside the lead boat's visual line and momentarily compressing the exact spacing the formation needed to keep open. From altitude, the mistake is obvious. From the bridge, it is sufficient. They are interfering with each other. Precisely. That is what the United States Navy wanted to create. Not a heroic exchange, not a cinematic detonation, but a tactical unraveling. A moment where sustained, disciplined pressure causes a coordinated harassment package to collapse under the weight of its own complexity. The destroyer drives through the gap. Wake hardening behind it, bow steady ahead. No sirens, no warning shots, just steel and power and timing that cannot be argued with. The lead Iranian craft breaks first. Its bow swings offline by several degrees, then several more. It is no longer attacking the seam, it is trying to exit the consequences of having missed it. Seconds later, the starboard boat opens its angle and abandons the position it spent the better part of 10 minutes establishing. The portside craft drops speed. The 2 northern boats, arriving now to a tactical situation that has already fundamentally changed shape, stop pressing forward and drift into loose open spacing rather than a closing second layer. The box is gone. At 5:30, the American tactical aircraft overhead descends just far enough for every crewman on every Iranian deck to see it with complete clarity. No weapons released, no flares, no theatrical display. Just presence underwritten by obvious reach and obvious intent. That is the merciless element. Not destruction, exposure. The Iranian boats are now fully visible, fully tracked, electronically disrupted, outmaneuvered on the water, watched from above, and completely unable to force a single American decision in any direction. What they intended to stage as a demonstration of regional leverage has become a live exhibition of lost initiative. One by one, the first course reversals begin. Not announced, not acknowledged, simply undeniable. The lead craft peels off first, then the starboard flanker. The others follow the withdrawal line back north toward Iranian waters, under American eyes the entire distance. At 5:34 local time, the challenge is finished. Not because the water is empty, not because the danger has evaporated, but because the initiative has. The 5 Iranian fast attack craft are still on the scope, still moving, still close enough to warrant attention, but the shape is gone. The box they spent nearly 20 minutes constructing in the Strait of Hormuz has collapsed into a loose, Uneven withdrawal line moving north. No clean arcs, no coordinated pressure, no further attempt to compress the destroyer's sea room. Inside CIC, the difference registers with quiet precision. Lead contact opening range, starboard contact turning away. Trailing pair no longer closing. The commanding officer stands at the bridge windows, eyes forward, and gives the order that matters more than any weapons posture, more than any show of force. Resume transit profile. That is how the United States Navy closes the loop. Not with celebration, with continuity. The destroyer does not pursue recklessly. It does not overcorrect the moment. It holds its lawful track through Hormuz. Grey hull, steady wake, flattening back into the rhythm it carried before the first Iranian contact ever accelerated out of the pre-dawn grey. The message requires no translation. The transit was not broken. The lane was not surrendered. The pressure failed. Overhead, the Seahawk remains on station long enough to confirm the withdrawal is genuine. From altitude, the crew watches the Iranian boats spread further apart as they head back toward the northern side of the strait. The lead craft, which had driven the first hard crossing maneuver, is now running without purpose beyond getting clear. The starboard flanker, once working to pin the destroyer into a narrowing seam, has opened enough distance that it no longer factors into any American decision. The trailing pair are no longer a second wave. They are witnesses to a plan that arrived too late to matter. The helicopter's cameras stay locked on all of it. Every turn, every speed reduction, every failed attempt to regroup. This is no longer just surveillance. It is a record that will not fade. Inside the destroyer, the electronic warfare team continues collecting until the last useful emissions dissolve into the background noise of the strait. Surface search sweeps from the Iranian boats grow weaker and more sporadic, more purposeless. The earlier coordination traffic is gone. What remains is fragmented, low-confidence chatter, the sound of units backing out of a confrontation they no longer own. Then comes the final confirmation from the shore, launcher activity no longer observed. That report moves quietly through CIC. No applause follows. No visible release of tension. Just nods, notes, timestamps, and the steady return of naval procedure doing what it always does after the sharpest moments, turning danger into documentation. At 5:36, the American tactical aircraft overhead begins pulling wider as well. Not because the mission fell short, but because it succeeded completely. The aircraft had not needed to fire, dive, or adopt any aggressive posture. Its presence alone had sealed the reversal. From the Iranian decks below, the meaning could not have been clearer. What began as a coordinated swarm against a single warship had ended under the observation of a fully integrated American response architecture, surface, air, electronic, and evidentiary, all converging without breaking discipline once. That is what broke the encounter. Not noise, not anger. Systems, timing, and composure held under sustained pressure. On the flight deck, the Seahawk returns first. The helicopter settles onto the stern with that familiar controlled violence that only naval aviators make appear routine. Deck crews move in immediately, securing the aircraft, folding motion back into order. Above them, the destroyer never stops moving forward. It holds its place in the transit, screening the formation, pressing on as though the last 20 minutes were simply another entry in the deck log. In a certain sense, they are, and that is precisely what makes the moment heavier rather than lighter. Because what happened in the Strait of Hormuz that morning was not extraordinary by cinematic standards. No missile exchange, no explosions, no wreckage burning across the surface. But by naval standards, by the standards of actual maritime competition in contested water, it was something considerably more serious. A live examination of nerve, geometry, escalation management, and sea control conducted in one of the narrowest and most politically saturated waterways on the planet. Iran had tried to shape the water. The United States Navy shaped the outcome instead. By 5:39, the nearest Iranian boat is more than 6 nautical miles off the destroyer's quarter and still opening. The others follow in staggered retreat, visible on radar, inert in posture. Merchant traffic continues moving through the southern lanes. The horizon completes its brightening. Morning light washes across the strait in the same quiet color it wore before the first contact ever appeared on the scope. Only the logs know the difference. And the logs know everything. The ignored hails, the converging bearings, the launcher movement along the shore, the radar behavior, the disruption order, the break in the Iranian formation, the first course reversal, the withdrawal. Every second is stored, time-stamped, and ready for the chain of command, for fleet-level review, for intelligence analysis, for anyone who requires precise documentation of exactly how the engagement developed and exactly how it ended. That may be the most unforgiving aspect of all, because this was never solely about turning 5 boats around. It was about reducing the challenge to its essential components and demonstrating in real time that the United States Navy can enter the Strait of Hormuz, absorb a layered, coordinated pressure campaign, expose every element behind it, and continue through without yielding 1 yard of control. No speeches, no bravado. Just a destroyer cutting forward through contested water while the boats that came to rattle it fall back toward the coast they came from. At 5:41 local time, CIC marks the Iranian contacts as withdrawing, and the threat posture begins easing by degrees. Not to normal, not yet, but measurably. The commanding officer takes one last look across the strait, then turns back toward the bridge team. Keep her steady, and that is exactly what they do, because Iran believed it was cornering an American warship in Hormuz. What it actually did was give the United States Navy the clearest possible opportunity to show the world what real sea control looks like when it is exercised by people who have spent their entire professional lives preparing for precisely this moment.